Hi, everybody. I am very excited to be joined tiday by two very good humans, two awesome professionals. I'm going to venture two good friends. We've got Christina Brown and Tibo Torche, whatever we want to go for, who are from Boustead Geospatial. We're going to find out a little bit more about the organization, about these two fantastic humans in a moment. I guess I just want to give an intro to the episode. This is an episode about, of course, the power of brand and when it connects with people and culture and talent acquisition. Critically, though, we've got a recruitment person and a brand and marketing person here who've worked together to bring that to life. So we're going to focus on that. I'm also going to cover, with your consent, a little bit on the power of doing values and EVP together and what that looks like. But most importantly, we want to give some insights and some recommendations for people who are struggling to attract, who might be thinking about their brand and how they align it all, and where they start. So I will stop talking and hand over to you guys. Christina, tell us a bit about you and your role at Boustead Geospatial.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Christina Brown. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Boustead Geospatial Group. I have a marketing team across 4 markets, which include Australia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Singapore. And we've got a mighty team of 25 marketing specialists. And we're basically a content, brand, event and digital team.
Super cool. Thank you. And Tibo?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Tibo Torche, and I lead the talent acquisition function across the Boustead Geospatial Group. So obviously focusing on Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Bangladesh as well. And we're obviously trying to provide as many and as close as we can, the best talent we can to the whole organization across all the different business units.
Fantastic. And it is a fascinating organization. It's unique. I've never known one like it. Christina, tell us a bit about Boustead Geospatial. Who are you? What do you do? And where are you heading?
So Boustead Geospatial is part of Boustead Singapore Limited. We are one of the arms of the business. There's about 800 professionals across the 5 markets that sit within Boustead Geospatial. And we service the largest group of ArcGIS specialists outside of the US in terms of in Asian Pacific key markets. So we basically sell both services and geospatial technology that really helps organisations in terms of understanding their data from I guess, a geographical map perspective, but giving them insights and unlocking insights that they wouldn't get through other forms of technology.
So smart work. And that's one of the things that I identified when we partnered up. You're bringing together some really impressive people. They're not showy, they're not egotistical, quite the opposite in some cases, but they are super smart. And what you're doing is not something that people outside the industry would necessarily know about and understand straight away. Tibo, how do you bring such a diverse group of people together and bring?
I'll lean on marketing mostly. No, I'm kidding. We're very lucky to have a brand that attracts by itself because we're part of a much larger entity, the Esri Inc. company, who's obviously the mothership in America, Redlands, California. So the Esri products have been and are very well known. That's like the top shelf product of geographic information systems. So that obviously has its own sets of rules and it attracts a lot of people to work for that brand. Obviously, we are an exclusive distributor, so it's very different than working for the mothership. And I think bringing that project to life along with marketing and the whole team has been instrumental in making people understand that we're not Esri Inc. We are distributors, and we are a bigger and a different entity through the Boustead Geospatial group itself. So how do we do it is fairly simple. It's not really rocket science. Everybody does it differently, I suppose, but it's about engaging and it's about finding the right message to convey to people out there. When it comes to technical jobs pertaining to GIS, ArcGIS, it's easy for us to find people because we've got that niche brand, that niche knowledge. So people that work within the space of geography or cartography or even IT to a reasonable extent now know the brand, now know the product and the platforms and the applications that we distribute. It becomes a lot more complex when you go to the market looking for marketing people, for corporate services people, HR, whatever it might be. So fine-tuning the message, and I guess making people understand what we do has been instrumental. The way we look at it is we want to make sure that our people that have fairly long tenures are capable of articulating why they're there, why they're enjoying being there, and what makes us who we are. And I guess that whole project really took a turn where we started really engaging with our staff and understand better what, really made them get out of bed, get to work, and enjoy what they do, and keep on doing it again and again. So we were lucky enough to have a very collaborative team across the whole entity, so that's across all the different locations that we're covering. I think what really unlocked our potential was to find out that the values that we have, that we had and that we have revised and that we've amplified were still fairly accurate. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's really a big finding in that exercise, and it's not a change, it's a realignment, it's an augmentation, a boost of what our people are doing and how they're doing it.
You've touched on something really interesting. It's interesting, Christina, and we'll talk in a moment about the values and the EVP that we did together. But I think what we're trying to do as an external when we come into these things is not to create something that wasn't there. It's to find who you and your people really are and help you find that. And it's usually you have a sense of it, but it's really how do we crystallize it and then articulate it really strongly. So I love that you said that, because actually the values that we ended up with were quite different in the articulation versus what they'd been. And yet they were built on not just the values that you'd written down, but actually what your people talk about. I'll go off script slightly. We prepared some questions just for structure, but I'll go off script just for a change. And say there's also that geographical element, right? I mean, this is something that you grappled with from the moment you joined Boustead Geospatial. How do we look at culture, look at brand across so many different geographies?
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the fantastic sort of outcomes that Tibo touched on from the work that we did. So when I started working at Boustead Geospatial, I was looking at how we were showing up as a recruiter, as an employer brand, and I was seeing some of the work that was being produced by my team, and I was like, this could be anybody. This feels like it could be anybody. And what we didn't have was that actual true understanding out of the verbatims, I guess, from the actual markets in terms of what was their lived experience. And so what we did is we brought your team in, Mark, and sort of said we actually need to talk to the teams. We need to go out into the markets. We can't establish what our values are as a group at the exec level. We need to actually hear it straight from the horse's mouths. So we ended up interviewing about 20% of our workforce. To be honest, I actually didn't know whether or not we'd actually be able to find shared values.
I remember that. We talked about this.
Yeah, and if you sort of think about the markets, some are similar and some are very different. I mean, Australia and Bangladesh are polar worlds
and
apart.
not just the culture in the business, but actually in the country.
Right?
Within,
absolutely right. And what, it was such a lovely moment when you presented to the executive and you said, well, actually, you have some very clear values that you all align to in your day-to-day. And I was like, excellent. That makes my job a lot easier in terms of that.
Yeah.
When I think about projects, and we're not just going to talk about the specific project, but one of the things that I valued the most about our project and what we did together was the preparation. So many good strategies, so many good initiatives. It's about the setup, right? And you'd already preempted. You said, look, you're going to have to get under the skin. With this team, they won't really challenge. They have high respect for seniority and for hierarchy. And so geographically, that often is, cultural norms and so on. So we really want you to think about how you can get under the skin of that. So we really rolled up our sleeves and opened up our minds for that and got that right. And I think it came through. Let's have a look at the EVP and the values that we developed together. And again, the words are fantastic. The stories are great, but I really want to talk about the essence underneath it. You mentioned it, Tibo. We talked about within the sector, within the industry you're in, the field you're in, you have this high quality, high caliber solution. And it's unique. And I think I remember there was a moment in our findings where we said to you, and people had told us this consistently, if you want to work in this space doing this work, you have to do it here. Not in a I'm trapped, but in a this is the place to be. So what we said is, well, that's something we've got to leverage. We've got to tell that. But we've also got to tell the story of the people behind the product. It can't all be about the product, especially as you're the distributor and the selling it, right? So where we ended up with the EVP and that opening lead line, if you like, was deliver the best GIS solutions in the world with the brightest minds on the map. And again, nice words. And I love that you're smiling. I feel the same. But it's not just the words, it's the structure. So you've got the best GIS solutions in the world. And you've done some message around what are GIS solutions so that for people outside really get it. The brightest minds on the map. So you've got this combination that people kept telling us. It's about the work we're doing. It's about the tools we're working with. It's about the reputation. You're working with clients and others who really value you because of what you bring. And you get to work with this team of people who are seriously smart people, right? And not arrogant, but they're bright folks. So how did that land for you in terms of those two elements, Christina?
Well, I think when we spoke about the brightest minds on the map, it was originally something I was a little bit shy of, because often it's pretty scary to put your brand out there and sort of say, we're bright. And I think, Mark, your advice to us was lean into it. That is your reality. We're not making it up. I do think it sends a really strong message to the market as well.
And to people, right?
And to our people. We have high caliber people inside the organisation, and we're looking for high caliber people. We also, I've noticed with there's a value that I hear the vernacular of, which is passionate curiosity. That's used a lot across the group. And the other vernacular is brightest minds on the map.
You see, I love that. And I was actually I drew an arrow on my notes from brightest minds to passionate curiosity. So what I liked, and we talked about this, again, this is, and I know you're fascinated in this stuff, Tibo, from a recruitment point of view. With the EVP, you're not just going, are those the right words, full stop? You're saying, where do those words, where does that concept, where does that core message take the audience? And what else do we need to do around it? And part of it was, if you actually look at your careers site, which is brilliant, I love what you've done, look at your job ads, look at your stuff, around that bold statement, you're very low key and you're very quietly self-assured, but no arrogance, and very human and personable. So I think it's the combination of that feel. What I love, though, is that you're linking it to these values. So just a little bit more for those who are listening. Again, check out their careers site, look at their jobs.
Please do.
But we write, Esri Australia, we turn problems into opportunities. That takes two things: the most powerful GIS technology and solutions, driven, talented, and passionately curious people, which leads directly into the values. And we talk about your core pillars: an opportunity to achieve and grow, a culture of support and passionate curiosity, a real impact that shapes the future. Now, those words are they're not particularly unique and fresh, but they don't need to be, because they sit within that device. But let's bring it to those values. You did the values at the same time as the EVP. So the values that we've got, and I like how the journey speaks. We're brought together by passionate curiosity. We stay together through integrity and deep relationships, and we strive together for excellence, progress, and impact. Looking back, I'm thrilled that you chose to do the EVP and values together. Why did you make that decision?
Well, there was a need, I think. So really, it was clear from the work that I was sort of seeing that was being sort of produced by my team, is that we didn't really have a position that we could own. And I was also aware that we also had different values across some of the markets that were quite clearly defined within market, but we didn't have group values. And so I couldn't see any value in running them in a staggered approach for probably a bit of a selfish reason from you don't want to go out to your people often, like all the time asking similar questions. Yeah. You need one brand voice, you need one change plan, you need one comms plan. So in terms of actually, and also we'd had all this sort of fresh, research that we really wanted to capitalise on. But you also, you need to marry up your values in your EVP, because the lived experience of people that are going through a recruitment with us, they are talking to the people within the organisation that really need to be demonstrating those values. So you can't have friction between what your EVP is telling the market and what they're seeing in that process. So it just made sense in terms of resourcing, being respectful of people's time, of having a cohesive brand voice and not duplicating work. That is basically why we did it.
And you said one brand voice, one change plan and one comms plan. So I love that. So we always say, and I'm going to ask you about this from a recruitment perspective in a second, we always say an EVP isn't just the gloss and the lovely and the hype. It is actually the reality and the intention and the aspiration and that story told about where you're heading. What I love about combining it with the values, and we talked about this at an event we did last year, right? When you add it with the values, see, a great EVP should be give and get. A great EVP isn't come here and we'll pay you loads and we'll give you a massage at your desk. An EVP says, this is worth it. Come and join this journey, but here's what we need from you. And when you bring that, here's what you're going to get back from not just the outcome, but the journey, the experience of getting there. Tibo, how are you using the values to attract and to attract and bring in the right people?
Well, look, I think, one thing that you guys are, talking about, and I think we're trying to enhance that message and promote it again and again and again, is that we're very authentic and we're very transparent, in what we do and how we do things. That cascades down to, the sourcing process, the recruitment process. We're very clear about what to expect, what you're going through, how long it's going to take, and so on and so forth. The engagement piece with internal or external candidates is the same for us. We talked about passionate curiosity. We talked about engaging, communicating with impact, emotional intelligence as well. And that's something that we've carried on, since I've been with the group. What I think we do is we are trying our best, at least, to make sure people actually understand what they're in for and how they are actually going to be impacting the organization, but also their own professional map, their career map. And through that sort of transformation of the EVP and the revision of values, what we did in terms of the recruitment process as a whole is made sure that everybody across the organization, across all those different culture, all those different business units and organizations, because they are different, we did make sure of one thing, and that was that there was a clear process from a hiring management perspective, but also from a talent acquisition perspective. So when we are going to market for external jobs that we're advertising, or we're going internal as well, the message is clear. We know what we're looking for. We know what we need and what we want people to bring into the company. So whilst we have a multi-stage process where you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 interviews, we really spend a lot of time sharing with candidates. And I think anyone that you engage with these days will tell you that we're spending a fair amount of time on the phone trying to make sure that they understand who we are, that they are aligned with our values, the way we do things, the processes we've got in place. We're not looking for bums on seat, if I may, but it's really looking at, we're bringing someone into a business that goes pretty well. We know that team has those values and those sort of traits, cultural traits, and we are bringing. I
think on the flip side, though, there's also that experience for them. So we know what we want, but we want them to really want to be in our business.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's
the other side of the coin.
That's the interesting bit,
right?
Absolutely.
So, and the age-old thing, and we've talked about this for decades. I certainly have, anyway. First of all, in the old school mindset, recruitment is seen as a buying process, right? We've got a wage. Let's see who gets through our Hunger Games of a recruitment process, and we will choose who wins. It's a wrong mindset, right? Because
it is.
First of all, you don't want to hire a professional interviewee or job applicant. You want to hire the right person for the company. Then there's the mindset we've got to sell it. Like, we've got to inspire them. We've got to want them to really work for us. And that's what both of you do every day to a large degree, whether it's around recruitment or customers. But the piece we'll always say is, but it's not as simple as that, because it's not you sell toothpaste to somebody, and if they don't love the product, they just don't buy it again, right? You sell a role to somebody that isn't right, and everybody's in trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think, it goes both ways. I've been saying this for a very long time, my take on this, but I think a candidate is buying into you as much as you're trying to buy into them. So it's got to be a win-win. It's got to be not just a yes, I can do the job. We don't want someone that wants a job.
Mm-hmm.
We want people that want this particular job with us
and to go on the journey. And I'm seeing more and more, especially look, many sectors are, in challenge right now. There's all sorts going on. There's economic challenges, there's geopolitics, there's all sorts. And there's also challenges around humans and work. I'm actually writing a blog post about this right now, so it's front of mind. We've got to inspire them, especially in a business like yours, for the journey. What you mentioned this idea of what we're becoming, of the future, of the strategy, and you said that one change plan, and one change voice almost. How do you do that in an organization that is moving and changing all the time?
Regular engagement comes to mind for me. I think it's the one thing that really stands out for me, reflecting on my previous experiences and so on and so forth. Like the previous organizations I worked in, there was never that sort of push for constant engagement. I mean, even from a granular level, like you talk to your staff all the time. That's great. Awesome. Do you listen? Do you
Great
action?
point.
Do you really cascade to that, to that thing that they're wanting, to those things that you're hearing? But it goes both ways as well. It has to come from the top. And I think, one thing that really changes for me is that the exec team, for example, spends a huge amount of time talking on a quality basis to everyone across the organization about how we're doing, what's in the pipeline, how it's progressing. We're talking about brand, we're talking about recruitment activities, we're talking about systems, tools, everything. So, and for an organization of 800, it's complex, but they do it.
Yeah.
And we do it every year, every quarter. The group managing director is so involved, and he's caring, genuinely caring. And I think all the execs are very much, wanting to see how things are progressing. So it's exciting.
And I'm going to say that's quite rare in a business of 800 people. 800 isn't technically that big, but compared to lots of businesses in Australia, it is. And I mean, I think, we've talked about this many times, Christina, but what we find almost every organization we work with, the staff will say, internal comms needs work. And I think too many comms professionals, and I am partially a comms professional, too many comms professionals think, we've got to tell people more things. And actually it's about how do we open up the conversation? How do we listen to people? How do we learn? How do we drive advocacy? Obviously that's part of your wheelhouse, right? The comms across the business.
You're right. I mean, I think to me, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Yeah. Would I say that we have perfected the group model? No, I would not. I would say, as I said, I mean, the EVP and values were only launched about 5 months ago, but we certainly have a much better understanding of who we are as a group versus where we were 12 months ago.
Definitely.
One thing that actually will really make a step change in the business is we've just introduced a group intranet. So that launched in mid-December. We never had any kind of sort of comms channel for group outside email, which sometimes got caught in our own spam filters. So all that, the warts and all of actually trying to build out a cohesive comms plan. One of the things we're now doing is really focusing on particularly our Asian markets about how do they become meaningful contributors into the intranet. So at the moment, it's probably too much of an Australian voice because it's generating out of my team who are primarily Australian-based, but how do we bring in meaningful contributors that really actually go, I want to communicate this story. I'm going into the intranet and I'm going to publish something.
Yeah. And it's taking off. I mean, looking at data, and I'm sure, we can talk a bit about that, but I think, you see it happening from an internal perspective. So going from no intranet group-wise to having a proper space to actually, look at the new starters across the different location, but also putting, phases on the name because we're recruiting distance and so on and so forth. So you've got this, and then you've got the engagement piece as well, talking about the client successes, the events that they're having, because there's a ton of events because you've got 5 different countries, right? So different cultures, different engagement type, but the offices are, really vibing about those the new brands, and the way we're engaging with them is a lot more fluid, I suppose. And I think they're buying into it. It's going to take time. It's not something that happens overnight.
And it's momentum, isn't it? I mean, over the years, we've done a lot of this. And for me, it's what you see. So I remember working with an organization and they'd never really done any storytelling. And we just produced 4 stories about 4 employees. And it wasn't, here's why they love working for us and here's why we're an employer of choice nonsense, right? It just said, who are these human beings? Why are they here? And what are they like? And what are they achieving? And what is hard? And it was 80% about their identity and 20% about how that connected with the work and with the organization. And the recruitment metrics were amazing. The outcomes were fantastic. But what pleased me the most was the groundswell of positivity internally, because people start to go, well, I want to share. And we saw many, many more stories being unearthed and shared because people felt they had permission. People felt they realized they could contribute to the momentum. Versus organizations where it becomes a bit of an anti thing. Oh God, here we go again. You know, the CEO's Employee of the Year award kind of thing. That's what you're working on, right? With the momentum.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that we have had some feedback on the past without having a group tool for communicating is what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So what's marketing up to? Like, we've heard they're doing this project. What does that look like? So at the moment we're working through what's the next phase of the intranet. And one of the things that we're going to do is rotate leader updates every week. So we're really just saying, here's what my team is doing. Here's our successes. Here's what's hard, and really sort of just trying to establish, even for, across the markets, that's what marketing does. Often marketing is the dark science, the dark art. It's like, actually they've done 5 really tangible things that are making a difference in my life. That's interesting. It's sort of that. And then that helps my guys on the ground in those markets in terms of establishing their brand profile within the organisation.
That's super interesting, because one of the things I hear a lot from marketers is we can't get people to be in the videos. We can't get people to share their story because, again, there's a trust piece, isn't there? And it's interesting. We work with marketing and HR, both of whom are often seen as the dark sides and the problematic piece, when actually both disciplines and both fields are trying to connect and inspire. I remember working with a small aged care business, and they had these different buildings like residences, and it was very tribal. And there was one that I can only describe them as Slytherin, like they were the black sheep, to use that age-old phrase. Self-proclaimed. And I remember we were doing discovery with them, and someone said, no one ever celebrates us. Nobody knows what we do. And I just said, well, why don't you tell them then? It actually, we had another business, an engineering business, and there was a manager in this workshop I was doing, and she said, nobody ever recognizes my team. And then I just didn't say anything. And somebody else in the meeting said, isn't that your job? And there's this interesting moment where you actually put it back on whether it's an individual contributor or a manager to say, if your story isn't being told, tell your story. And our job in brand and marketing and comms and in TA and P&C is to enable that and give people a way to do it, which it sounds like you're doing.
Absolutely.
And you've seen some surprises, haven't you, in terms of teams in locations where something's really taken off, where the values or the EVP really landed?
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting. So in some of our Asian markets, even the merchandise that we supplied as part of the program of the launch, they love it. I mean, it's,
love it.
And we see it. So we see them. So when we see photos of them out, in markets meeting customers, they're actually wearing the merchandise of it.
They're sporting it 100%.
Their team's 100%. Backgrounds are up and proud. We've got the head of Asia. He had his own specially designed EVP team's background that he was really
so good.
So there's certainly been an embracing of it. I do think, I don't want us to rest on our laurels.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for us to continue to work as both a marketing and a HR team. How do we keep embedding it from the moment their first touch point with us as a business all the way through to their lived experience 6 months in?
That's another thing I wanted to come back on, because you asked that question earlier on. The one thing that we all agreed on was that, I've seen it happen too often where you've got the project done, moving on to the next one.
Totally.
And then, things are kind of stagnating and it doesn't really shine as much as it should or could. The one thing that we are making sure of as well is that we've got a really strong onboarding plan. And I think from a people perspective, particularly when you're looking at new joiners or even people transferring between, business units
to different teams,
it is so critical. because they can only you can only do so much by attracting people, but converting them into a long-termer will come down to the amount of time and effort you put into creating that relationship, making sure that it's not just talk, making sure that they're not just buying into the values, but living those values. How do you make sure that someone that rocks up, day one as a finance officer or an HR advisor or whatever it might be, actually comprehends what it means for us?
Yeah,
how do you get them to really buy into that journey of, okay, I'm new, but I need to get acquainted with everyone. I need to understand what it means for us. So that's really something that we've done, and I think beyond designing the onboarding to prove the EVP quite early, we've got that continuous feedback loop, and we've got that sort of constant project, if you want to call it that, where we want to talk more about it. We want you to talk to us about how you experienced it. How do we position this next? You know what I mean? So,
and that's a really. I mean, there's a couple of good pieces of advice there for people out there. Whether you're starting from scratch on EVP or whether you already have one, EVP is not a project, which is interesting because from our perspective, we might have a project to help you uncover it and articulate it. One of the things I've learned over the years is we can't just give you it and then leave the room. We have to ensure that you understand it, that you understand how to apply it and how to embed it. And it is always a work in progress. So that's one of them. The other one that I like that you sort of alluded to, I think, Christina, was the people wearing the merch. It's the question isn't, or the challenge isn't, how do we get them to wear the merch? The challenge is, how do we get them to want to? How do we get them to choose to? And the fact that guy personalized his own is a great example of that, isn't it? Where a great EVP is a mirror for your staff to say, I see myself in this, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm glad I'm here. I'm proud to be here. And a mirror for future talent. So I want to be a part of that. But I love that it's not just, the next phase. It's no, this is ongoing, right?
Absolutely.
And how important is it, this collaboration, marketing, brand, comms, TA, people and culture, how important is that? I know it's easy to say, it's very important, but to be honest, it's one of the biggest issues we see when there isn't alignment and collaboration in an organization. It's very hard you can create an EVP, but can you turn it into consistent results? Harder.
So I am a little bit of a brand nerd. And the way I think about brand is customer brand, but it's also employer brand. It's also employee brand. So you can't separate one from the other because you show up in market in the same way, whether it's in a recruitment channel or in a campaign channel. So the way I've approached it, and I've done an EVP rollout in 2 roles, is always that the marketing team works hand in glove with HR and TA. You can't actually separate it. So the way we attack the project with the EVP is it was led by me and my team, working obviously in collaboration with Employer Branding Australia. But then basically from the launch, there was actually quite a formal handover to HR. And so I said to the head of HR, I said, okay, marketing's pushed it. We've got it out in market. It's very visual. It's it can be worn by our people. It can be used by our people. And now it's over to HR to take it to that next level in terms of embedding the values.
And that's interesting because you still have a role to play on socials and on marketing and campaigns and that sort of thing, but you're very clearly saying this is our remit and this is where we can add value, but we now need you to take that on.
It's an organizational strategy as well. It's a strategy piece as well, because you're not just posting jobs on socials. We're leveraging a lot on all those different platforms that we're using to talk about talk about projects and different launches and client case and whatever else. Whereas I'm posting jobs.
Yep.
Essentially, I'm talking about those
careers.
new things and all that. But the way it works internally is that marketing will post their own things, and we are relaying stuff, but they're relaying our stuff as well. So it's just that sort of circle, and I think it's a bit of a life cycle in EVP when you talk about how do we get to be known in different space that we're not. And I think for me a key thing that I like is seeing that our information, jobs, but also the different sort of marketing posts that we're putting are being relayed. Yeah. And I'm not just saying reshare, repost or whatever. It's really they look at it, they read it, and then they post about it with their own thoughts. And I think that's a game changer because sometimes, some of the messages and the things that we're pushing out can be quite technical. I'm not a GIS expert.
Yeah.
But I do understand it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to be turning that message into something that's maybe a bit easier to understand and comprehend.
This is the dream.
Yeah,
this is the dream, right? And I know it's not perfect, and you'll be the first to tell me, but you've got lots still to do. I cannot tell you enough how often what I'm told is marketing won't let us post on LinkedIn. Marketing owns the channel, and so they say no. Or marketing saying TA, talent acquisition, just wants us to post another vacancy. And we know that posting an individual vacancy on the company feed on LinkedIn, for example, is not a powerful way to promote careers and attract talent.
Well, we had this discussion, haven't we?
But interestingly, we do post once a month. So we accumulate all of the roles in each of the markets. And we post once a month, and it is very successful.
Yeah. Because you're covering a higher volume of roles. You're speaking to a high volume. The thing I always say, and the way I describe it to people is, you go out there and go, we are hiring a cybersecurity engineer in Manila. What are the chances that somebody who's following you sees that post and says, wow, I'm a cybersecurity engineer in Manila and I'm looking for a job right now? Like any marketer goes, that's crazy. And yet recruitment, and I bear in mind, I'll have a pop at every discipline that I am, that I've got experience in. But recruitment will say, but I need to fill a role. Whereas you take a different view, which is more strategic, more long-term. In the same way, on the other side, it's marketing won't let us touch anything because they do customer. When you know that promoting about the team behind the work, the care, the connection, the hard work, the expertise, the brightest minds is a great way to win business and grow brand.
Can also tell stories about what you offer through your people. I mean, we do people stories talking about, the project they worked on and how they really achieved something they didn't think was possible with a customer. I mean, that's fantastic storytelling that isn't living inside a case study.
Exactly right. And as much as possible, giving the mic to your people, giving them the voice. We always say it's not as people say, is it DIY content where they just do it themselves, like TikTok style, or is it professional? It's not about one or the other. It's about a blend. But I think being able to actually curate a narrative and a story without scripts, allowing people to riff off that and share their own perspective makes so much sense.
I think, people are starting to understand as well that there's a solution architecture behind the scene that needs to be carefully thought of. It's not just posting about jobs or marketing or sales opportunity or whatever it might be. It's a combination. So it's about finding that right balance. But see, for example, when we started having those discussions about who owns what on feeds that you're posting about, it's actually not so complicated when you think about it. You own the jobs, I own this. But let's work in a better way so it's so much clearer to the external audience to actually see where to go to find the jobs and then where to go to find about, client cases or opportunities and so on.
So there's about 150 people I have to send this to because this is the thing, right? Yeah. It's the collaboration.
Well, but also you use your people to recruit. So if you think about what Tibo's channel looks like and the amount of followers that you have, when you are posting jobs, you are always going to have better cut through than we are in a major field, and then who then shares those posts. So I think once again that goes back to human authenticity. It's your story, and we're not labouring at the point at the Boustead Geospatial.
And it's
level.
In a world of AI and AI content, it's your subjective interpretation and choice to share. That's so powerful. I think this is the future of content.
I think the only thing is we and to the audience out there, don't overdo it. Don't overcomplicate it. Make your message relatively clear. One thing that we always find more and more these days with the age of AI is that people don't read anymore. And it is so sad. It is so sad. You don't have a clue about how many, hours we put into getting those job briefs, making sure that the ads are actually really reflecting what the jobs are. And it's frustrating because sometimes you get those applications and you're like, why?
You haven't.
Why?
You've got to
just read.
You've got to make people care, right? Of course, now they can just put it in and get an AI summary into their earbuds, right? Well, I want to come back, and I wrote this down earlier on when you said it. You talked about employer branding and employee branding. Whenever we speak, I learn stuff, and or it opens up new thoughts. And one of the ones that I see a lot of people, including people in brand and employer branding, who confuse the two. And they talk about them as the same thing, employee branding, employer branding. For me, they're very different things. Employer branding is about driving the brand of the employer. Employee is the brand of the employee. And that's not just personal brand. That is the employee through the mechanism of I work here. And that is so untapped in the Australian market. And we see more of it in Europe and in the US, although I think it's gone down the gloss and PR route. But I think there's a real opportunity, as you were implying, to elevate the voices of your people. Let them share what this means to them and how this plays out in their role. An EVP, the best GIS solution in the world, with the brightest minds on the map. What does that mean in my role in this country for the next 3 months, or what are the moments that have mattered to me?
I mean, it's not, as a CMO or as a marketer, it's not my responsibility to tell people how to feel about a brand. So from an employer brand perspective, so from attraction and retention, working with Tibo and the team, absolutely. One of the things we'll be looking at is how frictionless is the current experience. That's probably the next project I want to tackle. But the employee brand is their lived experience. Yes. And I am not going anywhere near what that looks like. If anything, I just want it to feel like the moment they met us, they feel the same way about that brand 12 months later.
And I think it's their lived experience with you, but also what they bring. Their brand is what I make of this person, let's say it's internally, of my colleague. And we all know if you want to succeed in your career, if you want to succeed in an organization, your brand among your team and among others in the business really, really matters, right?
And I do think organizations, they get caught up thinking that the brand is what you see in advertising.
Yeah.
When I think about our brand, considering that we have a lot of people at the coalface in terms of working on GIS projects, either in client businesses or, directly, in sort of big project groups, like those people, those customers' perception of us and the people that they are interacting with, that's our brand.
I love that.
That's us.
And when you are that size, 800 people, I know you're across diverse areas, but you could be worst of both worlds or a glass half empty, or you can be glass half full and best of both worlds. And what you seem to be doing is seeking to harness that. We're small enough and connected enough where our leaders, our C-suite are engaged and listening and their names and they know yours. But we're big enough to be doing seriously impressive stuff at scale, right? And that's the story. I have 2 more questions for you. Flowing from what I've just said, I'd love to ask you, what are you most excited about looking ahead? We all know that
I want to take that one.
There's lots of change, lots of challenge across sectors. But what are you excited about for Boustead Geospatial and its team?
I think as a group, we have an enormous amount of potential. I think one of the things that we haven't yet worked out is how to scale really well across the markets and really pull down on expertise across all disciplines, but share that. So we are solving some very complex problems, technological problems for clients that we haven't found a way to sort of share it really effectively across our markets. I think if we can harness that as well as then inspire our people, I think our growth would be exponential.
I love it. Will be, I hope.
Yeah.
It's the plan.
And I think, to extend further, I think what I would love to see in foreseeable future, not too distant future, hopefully, maybe, driving more internal mobility across the group. So being capable of sharing our talent across the different segments that we're into. And you touched on this, but I think at the moment we are very much an employer of destination.
Right.
As in, the brand is known. If I want to get anywhere
in this space,
this space, I need to go through that. I want us to become an employer of choice, not of destination, and that goes through the work that the marketing team has done and keeps on doing and delivering. I think we need to spend a bit more time about getting people to talk about themselves within the organization, not just talking about the job they do. That makes sense. So it's really focusing more on the individual, the person.
So an experience of choice,
yes.
Choice.
So
super interesting. There's a lot of people who talk about employer of choice, and I can't stand it when they talk about it like it's an award.
It's not that.
Has given us an award, but you're saying something quite more profound.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not so much like I don't really care about awards and everything. I think it's really more about the perception
Yes.
And that's a branding thing. It's not just about like, oh, yes, we're an employer of choice. You're not an employer of choice by definition. You become one because of the way you treat your clients, your teammates, your staff. And I think that's really the game changer for me. So I think we've done a lot. We certainly still have a lot to do, and we're not the best in everything we do. Far from it, but I think we're on the right path. And that to me is probably the thing that I'm more excited about. It's working more with.
I think
Christina
from a GIS perspective,
we are
You're already there.
We are.
That's a just point. If you're in the space, you're the choice. They wouldn't be there. But how do you inspire marketers to go, oh my goodness, when I'd never even heard of GIS, let alone the organisation?
Yeah, and I think that is definitely harder. I mean, it's interesting. We touched on GIS as a niche technology. It isn't. Google Maps is GIS tech.
It's a base map.
It's a base map, but it's still geospatial
so
technology.
People can relate through that.
So the use cases are massive for us, I think, in terms of growth for us. Yeah.
Amazing. Right, last question. I promised only 2 more. So this one is for people listening to this. What's your advice for people who are either thinking about EVP or values or employer brand, or they're going, we're struggling to recruit, or culture needs a boost? What's your advice to them? I'd love to hear from both of you. Where do you start?
Let's start listing. I think the biggest stuff for me is to start with truth, not aspiration. So we've said it a couple of times during the chat, but I think you need to be and remain authentic. Don't change who you are. Don't change what you're wanting to achieve. You got to be yourself. That's probably the big thing for me. And avoid falling into the trap of all the polishing and the corporate language. I think we had a number of times a few good laughs online together.
Absolutely.
About that. But you're stop trying to appeal to everyone.
Yeah.
That's probably not.
That's right. It's an employer choice for whom.
That's
based
it.
on what, right?
Then, try and separate your EVP from reality as well. So you've got to own the EVP across the organization. So I think that's a big thing that we did so well. And that's, having that engagement from the exec leadership team, but also from all the other team, the hiring managers. It's a decision-making lens, realistically. It's not just a message.
So we're saying EVP is a magnet, a compass, and a call to arms. And the compass it guides our decision-making. If we're going to have to make some cuts to budgets, if we're going to have to stop doing something, or if we're choosing between 2 things, how is that going to impact that employee experience that you talked about and their lived experience, their truth? Thank you. Fantastic. And Christina?
I would suggest, so if you're looking at an EVP or values or both, don't make it up. So don't sit around a table and get a few voices from around the business and then go, we've landed something.
Vote on some words.
Vote on some words and then roll them out. Yeah. And I think that was, I touched on it before when I came in. I noticed that we sort of had a bit of vanilla messaging around EVP. The reason it stood out so much to me at that time was I'd just come through the recruitment process. So what I was seeing was not what I'd actually experienced. Right. So that really stood out to me. And so what I would say is even if you don't sort of have the money to invest in significant, say, focus groups, for example, find a way to talk to your people and make the process solid. Even if you're just working with specialists to define what the questionnaire would look like and what insights you drag out of them, will go all the way that we did, which was go into full focus groups. But use that, because that is what is going to drive the actual adoption of your EVP and your values. Because if you don't do it, you are literally making it up and everyone will see straight through it.
Absolutely love it. I could talk to you all day. Unfortunately, you've got work to do. So I will just say thank you so much for today and for coming in. And I hope everyone's enjoyed the episode.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for the invite.